Amara Johnson stared out of her office window, the Manhattan skyline gleaming under a crisp autumn sun. From the outside looking in, her life seemed perfect. At 35, she was an Ivy League graduate with a prestigious job as a project manager for Zenith Solutions, one of the top tech companies in the world. Her LinkedIn profile was a glittering display of accolades: top performer of the year, excellence in leadership, and countless praises from colleagues for her ability to deliver under pressure. But Amara knew better than anyone that appearances could deceive. Behind the polished veneer of her career lay a reality she rarely spoke about. Her office, though spacious, often felt like a glass cage, transparent, yet impenetrable. She could see her colleagues, mostly white men, climbing the corporate ladder with ease. Promotions came to them as naturally as breathing, while she remained stuck, no matter how much she excelled. She wasn't imagining it either. Amara tracked her progress meticulously, just as she did with the projects she managed. She had led 6 major initiatives in the past 3 years, each exceeding the company's expectations. The most recent one, a multi-million-dollar AI integration project, had saved Zenith Solutions millions in operating costs. Yet when her less experienced colleague, Brian, was promoted to senior manager after leading a much smaller initiative, Amara couldn't help but feel the sting. The meetings were the worst. Amara would present innovative ideas, only to be met with silence. Then minutes later, someone else, usually Brian or another male colleague, would repeat her suggestions and be met with enthusiastic nods and praise. "Brilliant idea, Brian." Michael Reynolds, their team lead, would beam. Each time, Amara swallowed her frustration, telling herself to focus on the work. But the microaggressions weighed on her, piece by piece, like stones in a backpack. The casual jokes about her ambitious nature, the way her name was mispronounced in emails despite years of working together, and the unspoken expectation that she should be grateful to be there, it all added up. What made it worse was how Zenith Solutions paraded her success when it suited them. Her face appeared on posters and LinkedIn posts celebrating the company's commitment to diversity. She was the shining star in their marketing campaigns, a perfect example of their inclusive culture. Yet when it came to real opportunities, raises, promotions, mentorship, she was invisible. Amara clenched her jaw, her reflection in the glass looking back at her with a mix of determination and exhaustion. Enough was enough. She had spent years proving herself, going above and beyond, and it was time to demand what she deserved. She gathered her notes and performance reports, meticulously preparing for her meeting with Michael the next day. This time, she wouldn't let him brush her off. Amara adjusted the collar of her blouse as she stepped into Michael Reynolds' office. The space was as ostentatious as the man himself, walls adorned with industry awards, a mahogany desk that seemed too large for the room, and a collection of overpriced coffee table books on leadership and innovation. Michael sat behind the desk, scrolling through his phone, his tie slightly loosened as if to project an air of casual authority. "Amara," he greeted her with a wide, overly familiar smile. Come in. What can I do for you?" Amara's stomach churned, but she forced herself to smile back. She had prepared for this moment meticulously, rehearsing her points until they came out smooth and confident. She wasn't here to beg for scraps. She was here to claim what she had earned. "Thank you for making the time, Michael," she began, taking a seat across from him. She placed a neatly organized folder on the desk, filled with printouts of performance metrics, project outcomes, and glowing feedback from clients. Michael glanced at the folder but didn't pick it up. "Of course, always happy to chat with my star player." Amara ignored the patronizing tone and dove in. "As you know, I've been with Zenith Solutions for 5 years now. During that time, I've consistently delivered results that exceed expectations. Most recently, the AI integration project I spearheaded saved the company $4.6 million in operational costs and brought in $12 million in new contracts." Michael nodded, leaning back in his chair. "You've done great work, Amara. No one's questioning that." Encouraged, Amara continued, "I've compared my performance to others in similar roles, and I've noticed a significant gap in both title and compensation. For example, Brian, who managed a smaller project with a much lower ROI, was recently promoted to senior manager. Based on my contributions, I believe I've more than earned a promotion and a salary adjustment to match my impact on the company." Michael's smile faltered and he leaned forward, clasping his hands together. "Amara, I hear you. And let me just say, I value your contributions immensely. You're one of the most talented people on this team. Amara braced herself. She could sense the but coming from a mile away. But, Michael continued, his tone shifting to one of faux concern, there are some areas where I think you still have room to grow. Leadership isn't just about results. It's about presence, about being assertive, about inspiring confidence in others. Amara's heart sank, but her face remained calm. I'm sorry. Could you clarify what you mean by presence and assertiveness? I've led teams of up to 20 people, consistently met deadlines, and received glowing reviews from clients. What specific areas do you think I need to improve? Michael's expression tightened. Look, it's not a criticism per se. I know it's tough to balance these demands, especially for someone like you. Someone like you. The words hung in the air like a slap to the face. Amara's pulse quickened, but she refused to let him see how much it stung. Michael, with all due respect, I've seen less experienced colleagues, people who haven't delivered the same level of results, be promoted and given raises. How do you explain that? Michael leaned back again, crossing his arms. It's not about comparing yourself to others, Amara. Everyone's journey is different. Amara's voice remained steady, though her hands clenched under the table. I understand that. But when the data consistently shows that women of color are underpaid and overlooked for promotions compared to their peers, it's hard not to see a pattern. Michael's face hardened. I don't think this is a productive avenue to go down, he said curtly. Look, I'll take a closer look at your request and get back to you, but I can't make any promises. The meeting was over. Michael stood up, signaling that she should leave. Amara gathered her folder and rose to her feet, her mind racing with frustration and indignation. As she walked out of his office, she couldn't shake the feeling that she had just been dismissed, not only from the conversation, but from the possibility of ever being truly valued at Zenith Solutions. The next day, her worst fears were confirmed. The email came the next morning. Amara had just poured herself a cup of coffee and settled at her desk when the notification popped up on her screen. The subject line read, Team Restructuring Update. Her stomach sank before she even clicked on it. The message was cold and impersonal. Dear Amara, as part of our ongoing efforts to optimize team structure and efficiency, we regret to inform you that your role as project manager has been eliminated, effective immediately. This decision was not made lightly, and we greatly appreciate your contributions to Zenith Solutions. Please contact HR for further details regarding your severance package. We wish you all the best in your future endeavors. Amara stared at the screen, her coffee forgotten. For a moment, the words didn't register. When they finally did, a wave of disbelief crashed over her. Eliminated? After everything she had done for the company? After pouring years of her life into projects that had made millions for them? Her hand trembled as she reached for her phone. She dialed Michael's number, her heart pounding in her chest. The call went straight to voicemail. Michael, this is Amara. I just received an email about my position being eliminated. I need to speak with you immediately. She hung up and tried again, this time calling HR. The woman who answered sounded vaguely apologetic, but offered no real answers. This was a decision made by leadership, she said. Your severance package will be sent to you within the week. Amara felt the sting of humiliation mix with anger. Leadership? Michael. This wasn't about restructuring. This was retaliation. By lunchtime, the initial shock had worn off, replaced by a slow, simmering rage. She replayed the events of the past few weeks in her mind. The high-stakes project she had poured her energy into, the glowing praise from clients, the meeting where she had dared to ask for what she was worth. And now, this. Her phone buzzed with a text from her best friend, Tasha. Tasha, hey girl, how's it going? Lunch soon? Amara stared at the message for a long moment before typing back, Amara, I got fired. Can you come over? An hour later, Tasha sat across from Amara on the couch, her eyes wide with disbelief. They really fired you? After everything you've done for them? Tasha asked, her voice rising with indignation. Amara nodded, her hands wrapped around a now cold mug of tea. They didn't even have the guts to call me. Just an email. Team restructuring. Tasha shook her head. Girl, this isn't restructuring, this is retaliation. You asked for what you deserved and they didn't like it. Amara sighed, leaning back against the couch. I know, but what can I do? They'll just bury this. They always do. Tasha's expression hardened. Not if you don't let them. You have a voice, Amara. Use it. At first, the thought seemed impossible. How could she, one person, go up against a multi-billion-dollar corporation? But as the hours passed, the idea began to take root. Amara started to think about all the other times she had heard whispers of unfair treatment at Zenith. Stories from colleagues, especially women and people of color who had quietly left the company or been pushed out. She opened her laptop and began searching for legal resources, eventually stumbling upon a law firm specializing in workplace discrimination. The next day, she scheduled a consultation. The meeting with the attorneys was an eye-opener. Amara laid out her story, from the microaggressions and tokenism to the blatant retaliation after she asked for a raise. The lawyers listened intently, taking notes. "You're not alone," one of them said. "We've had other clients from Zenith Solutions, black women mostly, who faced similar issues. Most of them settled quietly, but there's a pattern here." Amara leaned forward, her pulse quickening. "A pattern?" The lawyer nodded. "Yes, retaliation for speaking up, discrimination in promotions and pay. They've been careful to keep it under wraps, but if we dig, I'm confident we'll find more." For the first time since she received the email, Amara felt a spark of hope. She wasn't crazy. She wasn't alone. Over the next few weeks, Amara threw herself into building her case. She reached out to former employees, many of whom were eager to share their stories. Some sent her old emails and memos that hinted at the toxic culture within the company. One former HR employee even provided insight into how Zenith Solutions had quietly settled multiple discrimination complaints over the years. But Amara knew she needed more than a legal case. She needed to expose the company publicly. Amara sat at her small dining table, her laptop glowing in the dim light of her apartment. It was late, the kind of late where the city outside had quieted to a dull hum, and the only sounds in her apartment were the steady clicks of her keyboard and the occasional sip of cold tea. Her notes were spread across the table, printouts of performance metrics, testimonies from former employees, screenshots of emails that reeked of corporate gaslighting. She had spent weeks gathering evidence, connecting the dots, and now it was time to tell her story. The cursor blinked at the top of the blank document. Amara took a deep breath and began to type. Subject: an open letter to the leadership of Zenith Solutions and the public Dear Michael Reynolds, the leadership team of Zenith Solutions, and the wider community. I never imagined I'd be writing this letter. For 5 years, I gave my all to Zenith Solutions. I believed in the mission of innovation, collaboration, and inclusion that the company so proudly touted. I believed that my hard work, expertise, and dedication would speak for themselves. I was wrong. When I joined Zenith Solutions, I was proud to be part of a company that claimed to value diversity and equity. I was featured in your marketing campaigns, my face plastered on posters and social media posts as an example of your commitment to inclusion. But behind the scenes, my experience was far from the polished image you projected to the world. Over the years, I faced microaggressions that chipped away at my confidence. My ideas were ignored in meetings, only to be repeated by white colleagues who received credit. I watched less experienced peers, white men in particular, be promoted and rewarded while I was repeatedly told to be patient and work on my assertiveness. When I finally found the courage to ask for what I had earned, a promotion and a salary adjustment that reflected my contributions, I was met with defensiveness and condescension. And within 24 hours of that meeting, I was fired under the guise of team restructuring. But this letter isn't just about me. During my time at Zenith Solutions, I began to notice a pattern. Women of color, especially black women, were consistently undervalued, overworked, and pushed out. After my termination, I reached out to former employees, and the stories they shared were painfully similar. Retaliation for speaking up, discrimination in promotions and pay, a toxic culture that silenced us while profiting off our labor and diversity. I'm writing this letter because I refuse to be silenced. Zenith Solutions claims to be a leader in innovation and inclusion, but the reality is far different. It's time for the public to know the truth. And it's time for all of us, employees, consumers, and leaders across industries, to demand better. To every woman of color who has ever been told to wait your turn, who has been dismissed, overlooked, or retaliated against for daring to demand your worth, this fight is for you. Sincerely, Amara Johnson. Amara leaned back, reading and rereading the words. Her hands trembled, not with fear, but with the weight of what she was about to do. She had spent years playing by the rules, staying quiet and hoping that her hard work would be enough. But now, she was done waiting. She attached screenshots of the evidence she had collected, emails, internal memos, and anonymized testimonies from former employees. Then with one final deep breath, she hit send. The letter went live the next morning on a major media platform, accompanied by a detailed exposé written by a journalist who had taken an interest in Amara's story. Within hours, it was everywhere. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Amara's phone buzzed non-stop with notifications, texts, emails, and social media messages pouring in from colleagues, strangers, and journalists. "Thank you for speaking up," one message read. "I left Zenith last year because of the same thing. You're so brave." The article was trending on Twitter by noon, with the hashtag exposing Zenith going viral. People from all over the country began sharing their own experiences with workplace discrimination, adding fuel to the fire. By the end of the day, Zenith Solutions was forced to issue a public statement. It was carefully worded and full of corporate jargon, but beneath the surface it was clear they were scrambling. "We are deeply committed to fostering a culture of inclusion and equity," the statement read. "We take these allegations seriously and will be conducting a thorough internal review." Amara rolled her eyes as she read the statement. She had expected as much, a hollow apology and empty promises, but the public wasn't buying it. The comments flooded in. Internal review. Sweep it under the rug. Zenith Solutions is canceled. Amara Johnson is a hero. Pay black women. The pressure mounted as more employees came forward, sharing their own stories. The media frenzy grew, and soon the company's stock price began to dip. Investors demanded answers, throwing the leadership team into even deeper turmoil. The days following the letter's publication felt like a whirlwind. Amara's story had struck a nerve, not just within the walls of Zenith Solutions but across industries. News outlets dissected her letter, workplace advocates rallied behind her, and women of color from all walks of life flooded her inbox with messages of solidarity and gratitude. But for every message of support, there were detractors. On social media, faceless accounts accused her of playing the race card or being too sensitive. Some even questioned her qualifications, insinuating that she hadn't earned her position in the first place. Amara refused to let the negativity faze her. She knew the truth and she had the evidence to back it up. More importantly, she wasn't fighting just for herself. She was fighting for every woman who had ever been silenced, dismissed, or retaliated against for daring to demand her worth. The leadership at Zenith Solutions scrambled to contain the damage. Their first move was to hire a high-profile crisis management firm, which advised them to issue a second, more detailed statement. "We are deeply sorry for the experiences shared by Ms. Johnson and other former employees." The statement read, "We acknowledge that we have fallen short of our commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion, and we are taking immediate steps to address these issues. This includes hiring an independent firm to conduct an internal audit and implementing mandatory bias training for all employees." The statement made headlines, but Amara wasn't impressed. She had seen this playbook before. Empty promises meant to quiet the public until the outrage died down. The internal audit, predictably, uncovered a pattern of bias and inequity within the company. But instead of addressing the root causes, Zenith's leadership made superficial changes, promoting a few women of color to visible roles, updating their diversity policies, and hosting a series of well-publicized town halls. To the public, it looked like progress. But to those who had lived through the company's toxic culture, it felt like a slap in the face. Amara knew she couldn't control what Zenith did or didn't do. What she could control was how she moved forward. The media attention had thrust her into the spotlight, and she decided to use her newfound platform to make a difference. She partnered with workplace equity advocates to launch an organization called Equity Forward, a nonprofit dedicated to empowering women of color in corporate America. Equity Forward offered resources, mentorship, and legal support to women facing discrimination in the workplace. It also worked to hold corporations accountable, lobbying for stronger labor laws and transparency in hiring and promotion practices. Amara poured her heart into the organization, finding a renewed sense of purpose in helping others. She traveled the country, speaking at conferences and universities, sharing her story and advocating for systemic change. Her journey wasn't without challenges. There were days when the weight of it all felt overwhelming, when she wondered if her efforts could truly make a difference in a system so deeply entrenched in inequality. But then, she'd receive an email or a message from someone who had been inspired by her story, someone who had found the courage to speak up because of her. Those moments reminded her why she had started this fight in the first place. Despite Amara's efforts, Zenith Solutions weathered the storm. The public outrage eventually died down, and the company continued operating much as it always had. The leadership team remained largely intact, and while some changes were made, the systemic issues persisted. It was a bitter pill to swallow, but Amara refused to let it define her. She had learned that change was slow, often agonizingly so, but it was possible, and she was determined to be part of that change no matter how long it took. 2 years after her termination, Amara stood on a stage at a packed convention center, addressing an audience of thousands. The event was a national summit on workplace equity, and she was the keynote speaker. As she looked out at the sea of faces, women of all ages and backgrounds, men who had come to learn how to be better allies, she felt a surge of pride. "This fight isn't just about me," she began, her voice steady and confident. "It's about all of us. It's about creating a world where no one has to choose between their dignity and their paycheck, where we are valued not for how we look on a poster, but for the work we do and the ideas we bring to the table. And while the road ahead is long, I believe we can get there, together." The audience erupted into applause, a standing ovation that echoed through the room. Amara smiled, not for the applause itself but for what it represented: hope, solidarity, and the promise of a better future. As she stepped off the stage, a young woman approached her, clutching a notebook. "Ms. Johnson," she said, her voice trembling, "your story changed my life. I just wanted to say thank you." Amara placed a hand on the woman's shoulder, her smile warm and genuine. "You're welcome. And remember, you have a voice. Use it.